Okay. Is it on? Is it going? Twitch says I'm offline. I don't know about this. What's going on? What's going on? There we go. Yeah, hey. Hi everybody, I'm Eric. I'm making a game. It's called the Godkiller. It's a 3D top-down puzzle-solving adventure game. In this game, you walk around inside of a world full of vast spaces, lots of ups and downs. A lot of vertical movement in the world, and onto staircases. You have to look inside of the space and figure out a plan for your character. It's got lots of combat in it, but it's all turn-based, but not really turn-based. When I say turn-based, I don't want to be lumped in with games, great games, like Civilization, for example, where you figure out what you're going to do in a turn, you get all your moves together, and you press a button to say go or next turn. It's not like that. You make your move exactly when you want to make it, and you do it just by pressing a key or moving your controller, and you move, and then the world moves with you, but only when you move. It doesn't keep going, keep progressing. Like if there's an enemy chasing you, you can stop and think about how to evade him as long as you want, and then as soon as he could be like right behind you, about ready to destroy you, but you just, as soon as you are ready to move, you move, and then he'll continue chasing you after you move for one step. So I call it a stepper. And the difference between turn-based and a stepper is that the stepper just instantly enacts your movement and updates everything else, and there's no waiting around, and there's no confirmation of a turn ending or anything like that. I've made other games like that. There's one called Drod, Deadly Rooms of Death is what Drod stands for, and a number of people enjoyed that game. And I like that style of game quite a bit. I like for there to be action in the game, and things that you kill and destroy, and things that chase after you, and that kind of thing. But I also really love combining that with just contemplative puzzle solving and removing the stress out of it to make it more of a logical exercise, I guess. So I don't have much to demo. I'm not going to take too long to demo. I've created like a test level here. The general place I'm at with the project is there was an old project, it was broken, and I'm moving over the stuff into the new project, and so I'm sort of recovering or resurrecting the functionality of the old project into the new project. And I'm just checking each thing in a bottom-up fashion as I bring it into the project to see, does it still work as I expect it to? Does it have any bugs? Is it doing something in a way that I really hate, or is going to not be very maintainable? I'm fixing all those things as I bring each object in. It's almost like moving to a new house, and you're sort of like Marie Kondo, and you're saying, does this algorithm sparkle? Does it bring me joy? When I hold it in my hands, does this algorithm make me feel something? And if it doesn't, then I won't throw it out, but I will rewrite it. That's a really bad analogy. I'm trying too hard with the metaphors. Okay, so demo, not much to demo, if I'm honest. I had a failed mission last night. I set up my session mission to add in floor decorators, which is a procedural generation of details that are added to the scene to make the floors and walls more interesting to look at. I think I've got like a quick article on Medium. Yeah, this one here. So I'll just show you a quick example. Okay, so here's like the before and after. So the scene is first in the before. It's got just a plain geometric look to it, and underneath there's more details that are added automatically as a result of procedural generation. So the first thing that I saw, no, it wasn't the first thing. The fifth thing I saw that was wrong with the existing code to perform this decoration was that the coordinate space was messed up between these cuboids that I've got defined that say what the active gameplay area is, or the depth scan zone I call it, and the operation zone. The operation zone is an editor only construct. It designates an area to which I'll perform a decoration operation, or in theory it could be a different kind of operation, but in this case I was using it for decoration. So I would take this cuboid that you see here, the one with the light blue outline, and I would position it so that the part I wanted to decorate was inside of it. But the coordinate system was off, and it reminded me of how I sort of hated fidgeting around with these zones. And I'd have to spend on most levels like maybe an average of 15 minutes fiddling around with the placement of things, and occasionally I would have to redo a lot of work because I might have like designed some objects that were off in a coordinate space that was outside the bounds of what my code was willing to work inside of. So the code is assuming that levels start at the origin and move out away from it, and if I had done something that kind of required it to go past that 000 area, it could end up generating a lot of work for me to do. So I wanted to kind of get free of some of those constraints. So I failed the mission last night, and I gave myself a different mission that had nothing to do with the first one, which was just to delete a whole bunch of unused materials that were in a third-party asset so that I would not have so much clutter in my project. Not really performance-related clutter, because a Unity build will remove unused assets from it, but more organizational clutter. So if I go to an object and I say, this isn't the right texture, I want to bring up a different texture. I click on it. There's a whole bunch of textures in here, and quite a few of them were coming from third-party assets. I removed all the materials I wasn't using from one of the third-party assets, which made this a much more manageable list. I still see quite a few for another third-party asset, so I think I'm going to save those tasks as kind of my I'm really tired but I want to get something done in this session tasks. So I'm not going to continue and remove all these materials. I'm going to save those as some easy tasks that I can sort of do on some evening when I'm really feeling quite tired, because those are pretty easy and straightforward to do, especially with this new tool I've got called Find Reference To. So Find Reference To, it'll put a little number up in the top left hand corner of an asset, which is the number of references throughout the project including the scene, including like the project area itself. So I can tell that nothing is using no draw, nothing is using invisible face, nothing is using face picker. I'm not going to go mess with these because Pro Builder is complex enough that Pro Builder is a complicated tool, and I don't want to fuck with it. That's a short way of saying it. Basically, I don't know how I'll use Pro Builder in the future. I know that there's a no-draw material that you can use for some purpose, and I forgot what that purpose was, but it's one of those things where if I delete things out of Pro Builder that I am not using now, I may learn later that I actually do want to use that feature of Pro Builder, and then I'll have to go through some machinations to restore the lost functionality. But for these other third-party assets, I can be a little bit more brazen about, is it brazen or brazen? It's a word I don't use often, about removing assets. So like in JMO assets, I know that I really only want the shaders out of it. I don't want the materials. I don't want the demo scenes. I don't want the models that are in the demo scene. So I deleted all that stuff. I've just got shaders left in it and supporting scripts. So that's fine. Anyways, this session, I want to get back to that first failed mission, but I don't want to continue in the same way. I want to write one piece of the solution tonight. And that piece is just a function or set of functions that will find a bounding zone that contains all game objects in the scene, excluding certain game objects that are designated as not part of the play area. So if you think about how scenes are set up, say this is this grid here thing, say that is the area that the player is inside of. So I'll call it the active area. And say this thing here is meant to be just like a background thing. It's just scenery. You know, so I could have this thing like sort of off in the background, or I could have it, you know, going kind of underneath this a little bit. Okay. So last night I was sort of brainstorming, thinking like I might have some kind of marker object that shows when to stop looking for boundaries, but I thought it's something like more elegant than that. I can just use this tag, and I can use an existing, not the tag actually, the layer, ignore raycast. And what that'll do is I can, when I'm finding that bounding box that contains all of the active game objects, or the game objects that can actually affect the player and dynamic parts of the scene, I can take only those active objects and use them to define the bounding box. Any that have ignore raycast on them will just be excluded from that consideration. And I think that's a pretty elegant way to feed a useful set of inputs into this function I'm going to write. Okay. I don't think this is going to be a hard function to write. There's probably even like some snippet someplace online that has the whole thing, but I just don't think it's going to be that hard for me to write. So I'm probably not going to bother to look for a snippet. I'll just go ahead and do it. So I've already got someplace, yeah, depth scan util. So this is my code that just fires a raycast downward from a point and uses that to find where all the floors are at, and conversely fires it back up and uses that to find where all the ceilings are at, and from that it generates a quantized representation of the space that all those meshes take up. So it's almost like a height map for a terrain, but a little more complex than that, because a height map usually has just got one height to it. Oh, hiccups. I think it's the combination of talking and bad posture that generates the hiccups. Anyways, a height map usually has one height associated with it. This thing has multiple heights, and it has all the heights of floors and ceilings, and it can be used very quickly to determine things like if a player walks off the side of a cliff, to what height should they fall. So anyways, the depth scanner goes through and checks all the heights and generates this height map, for lack of a better word. And this is probably the right home for me to write some kind of function that discovers the bounds of all the objects in the scene. Alright. Trying to remember, and I forget. Unity. Get all game objects and scene. Now I'm thinking about it a little bit more. criteria I have might need to be expanded a little bit. Because there may be a bunch of objects that are just really not part of the scene at all, or not part of the level. So why don't I assume that everything we're going to look at will be inside of level. And I do have some code already that kind of, there's this thing here called organize scene, which will move a whole bunch of objects that it finds inside of here. Okay, so let's just say I like to use the verb find for any operation that's probably expensive. So I'm thinking about editor code versus runtime code. So I have a pattern that's pretty good, which is game code should not call editor code, but editor code can call game code. And the home that I chose to put this function in is in game code, and the place that has all of the organization of paths and inside of the scene is in editor code. So I'm thinking how I want to move things around so that I'm keeping the spirit of the pattern, but I can still access this. One thing is that this operation of finding the bounds within the scene is expensive. I don't want it to run all the time. Like every time you load a level, I don't want it to run each time. That's poor. So probably this code should be in the editor, and it remains for me to create some kind of storage where the values are retained, and they can be picked up at runtime. So that means to me that this should be editor code, and I can either kind of hybridize this file and have it contain some editor code and some game only code, or I can move this to a different file. So arguably all the depth scanning should also be done at edit time and not at runtime or at game time, play time. So if that's the case, and this is starting to get very sweater threadish, this file should be converted into editor code. Mean I take it out of the Godkiller namespace and put it into Godkiller editor. I think that's a good solution. It'll break some other code, but it's code that I want to change anyways to make it better. So the end result of decisions like this might be nothing, or it might be that when you start a level, instead of having like an annoying little kachunka, like an annoying little frame drop time, or not frame drop, but frame stutter, it'll just be smooth, and the level will start quicker and look better. So that's what I'll do. Just before I move it, let's save it. Okay. So now that I put it in the editor namespace, I can get access to this level path. Okay, so that's my root object. I think this will, instead of doing like the thing where I find all the game objects in the scene, I'll just go recursively through this root object, this level object, and see where that takes me. For that, I'll need another function. This will take the current game object and then the list. Okay, so we'll say we'll check our criteria for the game object to see if it should be added. I can use this same layer mask here. So the default layer must be set. So I was kind of wondering why it's a bit mask. When in the inspector, I can only set it to one value. Okay, so it'll be 0 is the one I want. So we'll just say, I'm pretty sure this is right. I think my comment was a little bit feeble that I just made on that doc page. Godkiller not equals 0. Default. Return. Otherwise, we add this game object. And we just look at all of its children. We're just calling recursively to goes. Get try. What am I missing? Is it do I have to go to let's, okay, I know. Go child. Get child. Is it the transform? Yeah, it is. Okay. I still kind of don't get why some things are in transforms and some things are in game objects. Is it true that every game object has a transform? Maybe not. It seems like I could. No? Yeah, I don't know. It seems to me they could have consolidated those two things, but there might have been a good reason not to. Okay, so this should be pretty easy. We just call recursively for each one of these. Go and set. Okay. So it should give me a list of all the qualifying game objects. In fact, I kind of like that naming. Find qualified I know there's already code to take bounds and kind of add to them. I feel like I've written this code already. Let me just take a look at what is already present. Close. take a note of this function here. I'll end up using it later. The bounds GUI, that's probably useful too for visualizing. Oh, look at this. Well, this is it. Yeah. That's a question. Do I really need to have this extra criteria here? Actually, I do. I do. So I could call this, but it has a much different contract. So I think what I'll do instead is I'll just bring the code over here and kind of reference it and then write some slightly redundant code. I don't feel like I'm going to get a lot of value out of refactoring the tiny little bit of code that is common to the two. Although I've changed my mind, because now that I actually put the code in, I see it is divided in pretty much the same way as this other one. So if I come back here and I say then I want enumerable object. Keeping it dry. I'm glad I contradicted myself. That's much better code. Okay. Now this will almost certainly fail. The fail to compile. Let me fix that. Build. It. Okay. So I want to be able to see this thing actually work, and I think a nice way to do that is just to add like a little menu item to test it out. There it is. Then editor util, draw bounds GUI. Nah. Alright, I'm not gonna mess with that right now. Let's just debug it. This is running so much faster than it used to. Like these builds, I used to be sitting here talking to you just like I am now while I was waiting for it to build, and then I'd be ready. But it was done fast. That's great. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Good. Which one is this? That's just the very topmost level. How many children? 5. That's a good number. Decorations, empty directory. I might want to do something where I don't add it to this list if it doesn't have a renderer, but still recurse. Floor, cool. Okay, I feel like this is gonna work, so let's just step out. How many? 5, that's good. Okay, so we got the top level, which doesn't have a renderer, so that could be omitted. Decorations, another empty directory. The floor, the wall, that extra cube, and it left out the strata stick, which is that thing that I turned to ignore raycast that was meant to be kind of like a background object. So that's good. now we'll see how it does. So this first one I think is going to be the level. Yep. It probably will not have a renderer. Yep. Which one's this? Decorations, no renderer. Floor, this one should have a renderer. Good. Bounds are not set. So we don't use encapsulate because it's the first one. Now bounds are set. Encapsulate just adds the two bounds together to make one containing bounds. Okay, what's this one? Yeah, this one should encapsulate. Cool. I think we got one more. Okay. So that's it. It's going to return the bounds. Unfortunately, it's not assigning to an object, so maybe it will. Okay, it does assign. Okay, well, is it there yet? Not yet, but now it is. Cool. Doesn't seem right to me at first glance. Let me look into it further. Okay, I think there's one object that's missing from it, like that giant floor thing. I'm going to take a look at that. I suspect this is working just as I wanted though. No. So I think the first way I had the code is going to be the best way, actually. This check for a renderer is already performed inside of get game objects bound, so I don't want to also check it here. It'll just be a redundant check. It'll be a get component lookup for every object. So what's this one? Cube. Let me just rename this thing. Base 4. Okay. Oh, it wasn't inside of the level object. If I stick base floor inside of the level object, then it should be just fine. Stratistic is there. So all those are default. Default. Okay. You know, it might be a little more fun than having this menu item here. I'll just create a little game object that will draw the bounds around it. I'll stick it here for now. Level bounds, UI. Okay. Then I already did this for what is it? Cable socket editor. Yeah, this kind of thing. Okay. Do I need that? Look at this. Let me see. So what is it? This is going to be I don't level bounds editor. Okay. I'm not sure. Do I actually need this statement? I just want this on-scene GUI to run. Will it run for a mono behavior, or do I need the editor? Let me just see other places where I've got on-scene GUI. Every single one of them is inside of that editor thing. I did something like this for the hands box. Let me see where this hand stage. Because I don't really want to use an editor. I don't have a value to edit. I just want to show this kind of thing. Yes. What is it? It's just a mono behavior. Fine. Or maybe Gizmo. Come on. That's irritating to me. Going through the things to check. Level bounds gizmo. Does the name of the file match the name of the class? It does. Oh, this should be mono behavior. So I'm in the right namespace, right? Godkiller editor. And Godkiller editor. And just for kicks, let's try this. I hate this shit. Because I just sort of run out of logical things to fix, and I'm sure it's just some tweaky bullshit. Let me go back to here and get like a full Unity build to happen. like I said, tweaky bullshit. What? So, there's so many problems with Visual Studio. So you think, here I am in Visual Studio. They told me about some warnings. So what I'll do to learn about the warnings is I'll click on the warnings. I just click it one time. I don't move my mouse, and it like briefly displays underneath a panel, tantalizingly, that has all the warning information in it. However, after a 1 second delay, that panel disappears. Not initiated by any action of mine. It just disappears. So what if I hold down it? Nope, still doesn't. What if I double click? Nope. Click down here. There we go. That's some great UI. Okay, so looking at warnings, because I like to run clean. This stuff is in third-party assets. All of it's in third-party assets. All the warnings are in third-party assets, and that's where I want them to be. Nothing in my code. Okay, so now I know this code builds. It does not seem to be drawing anything yet. Let me set a breakpoint and see what's going on. It's probably this kind of thing. Also, I think I'll just use draw gizmos. All right. Code is not executing yet. But I've done this before with the hand stage, so this is working code over here. Did I set this? I did. It's right there. The script is enabled. Okay. There it is. Okay. So let's see what decisions it made. See, this is nice. So the bounds are exactly what I want them to be. Oh, never mind. Patty Pet, you spam bot. No, I don't want to become famous. Go away, bot. I would never buy followers. There's no point. If you buy followers, the best it could do is maybe trick some people into coming and watching your thing because you've already got followers, right? But so this guy must be good. He's got thousands of followers. But Twitch is going to have its own defenses against fake bots and followers. And as soon as their algorithm detects that my followers are sourced from some bullshit place like what Patty Pet is describing, then I'll be penalized. And for what was I trying to do anyways? Just fake out some people to get them to come look at what I was doing? Nah, it's just not that important. If it was important, it would be risky. Too risky to fuck around. So this works exactly as I intended it to. I've got my bounding box around the items in the level, and it excluded this guy here who has ignore raycast set. So I can have background objects that aren't ever going to interact with the player or other active game objects, and those will be excluded from the level bounds. So this level bounds will later on feed into a number of things. There's a data structure called a board specific to my game, which contains the logical information about where different game elements are. And it's quantized to columns, rows, and heights. So that board, I can apply an offset from real-world coordinates to the logical coordinates in the board. It will be based upon the level bounds I discovered with this function I wrote in this session. The other thing that I'll use it for is the locations to use for raycasting to generate the height map that I talked about earlier. So I know from these level bounds that when I run my raycasting over the top of this to find floor heights, and up from above to find ceilings, that I'll use the boundaries here as like where the raycast will start from. So this is great. This is very helpful for me. I'm happy. Last thing I'm going to do is prefab this little level bounds gizmo. don't need to move the whole thing in. You can just add a component. Level balance gizmo. Okay. Cool. So now the editor object will just have this gizmo added to it automatically. Okay, did I pull that out? Good. Okay. Save it. Git commit it. And that is a stream. Gonna stop it. Gonna stop it anytime now. It could be just seconds from now.